What's going on, Martin?
Oh, hey there.
That's actually not an adequate name for you anymore.
Yeah?
You need something more hipster.
I don't know what name that would be.
I don't know, like Eugene.
Could I be Malachi? I've always thought that name was kind of cool.
Yeah, Malachi. That's a pretty good one. I'm feeling pretty patriotic today.
Yeah?
You know?
Something also, like that.
Just
also blinded.
A little bit.
Can't see through that.
Like I need to bring justice to the world, but I will curb those impulses. Just a bit.
Yeah, how much can you see through those flags?
Not very well. I can tell that the camera's on. And I can see you, but there is kind of just like a screen over the world.
Oh, fair. Well, just so we're clear, I'm fairly certain that might be violating flag code.
What, this?
Yeah, you're not supposed to put the flag on stuff.
Wait, you're not supposed to put the flag under stuff?
You're not supposed to put it on clothing and stuff, just so you know.
Wait, for real?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people.
Nobody cares. Nobody cares. I'm just saying. You know,
there's
you're under
a lot
arrest.
of frat guys with like flag shorts at every university in the entire country that are gonna have a rude awakening.
Oh, I'm pretty sure I read that was thing. I mean, it's like a lot of old rules that nobody listens to, so it's not like it matters.
Oh, okay,
I'm just saying. I'm fairly certain it does say that somewhere.
Fair enough. So people are gonna be listening to this on what, like November 6th or something like that.
Someday that is not today.
It's Halloween while we're recording this. So we get to wear costumes and you have to deal with it. Unless you're listening to this, in which case you don't
have to
get to see it. Yeah. Yeah. Far more people listen to this podcast than watch it on YouTube. So I guess just the few people who do watch it on YouTube have to deal with the dumb costumes. But we have 5 questions today. I like 5 questions episodes. These are fun. And I do have to admit that we meant to do a book analysis episode this week, but I'm a slow reader.
You are a slow reader.
I'm a very slow reader, and I'm not even done with the book that I'm currently on, which I need to finish before I start the book that we're going to talk about. I don't think people want us to analyze the history of cryptography book that I'm reading. Unless, of course, they do. I don't know.
That seems like it might be a little esoteric.
We can talk about Caesar ciphers and Enigma machines.
I don't know what that means.
And RSA and all kinds of stuff. We can talk about that.
I don't know. I mean, I know what some of that means. I don't know what all that means.
Well, read the book.
But I also don't care.
Yeah, I don't think people are going to come to their school success podcast to learn about the origins of cryptography. So I will finish that book hopefully early this week and then start in on the next one. And I do have a bit of a head start because I have read about half of the next one. So hopefully I'll get it done by the time we record and you'll just crush it in a week or in a day because that's what you always do.
I already read like 20% of it yesterday.
Oh, wait, did you?
I had a spare 40 minutes.
I don't know how you read so fast.
By putting time into the book. What kind of question is that?
I read for like 2 hours yesterday and I didn't finish the book.
Did you read that book?
No, I read their cryptography book.
Well, there you go. You're reading a really ridiculous, dense book with a bunch of names and words and stuff.
I mean, the other book has names and words and stuff. I don't know. I guess the cryptography book is kind of dense, but still...
I don't expect persuasion books to have, like, a whole bunch of vocabulary I'm not that familiar with.
That's true.
I don't know. That's the entirety of what you're reading.
I like read an idea, and I think about it for a bit, and I just don't truck over the words like you probably do, I'm guessing. Because 20% of that book...
Just read the books.
Just hanging out at night. And you were playing Mario last night.
Yeah.
Which I do want to levy a complaint at Amazon.com because they lied to me and I did not get my package yesterday.
You're blaming Amazon. Here's why you're blaming Amazon, Tom. It's because you weren't loyal enough to pre-order the game when I said, hey, we could get this game at like 10 p.m. And you were like, I don't care that much. It's just a game. And now you're all complaining that you don't get it the day you wanted.
All right.
You could have had it days ago.
Hear me out. What you told me
last week.
What you told me is I would have to go to GameStop at 3 p.m. to pre-order it. Then again at 6 p.m.
You didn't already pre-order it. That's the issue.
Then again at 6 p.m.
You failed yourself.
To verify the pre-order. Then again at 10 p.m. to get the game.
That's how early. You could have just got it the next morning, and you could have just gone twice.
That is true. I don't know.
You would have had it sooner if you just walked in and hoped they had a copy, not for pre-order.
I was busy. I was working on some stuff. I was designing.
That's what I'm saying. This ain't Amazon's fault. It's your fault.
It is Amazon's fault.
For not considering.
It said out for delivery, and then it never got to me. And then they're like, oh, we're sorry.
Yeah, but you know that's the delivery people's fault.
Actually, it's UPS's fault. You're right.
But also, that's not reliable. It's not going to be perfectly reliable. And for something as important as Super Mario Odyssey, you just need to make things happen yourself. You know, if you want something done right, you do it yourself. right? That's what this outfit tells to me.
I guess you're right.
That's what this axe says.
Well, an injustice has been committed.
Yeah.
UPS has not delivered my game on time.
You better show up to their place with that plastic. No, you should not show up to their place with the plastic
with
axe.
a plastic axe. They're
going
to be like,
don't do that just in case they're more annoyed.
We think you're threatening us, but you're holding a plastic Halloween prop.
We actually feel sorry for you.
We actually kind of pity you, to be honest. Can you leave now? Anyway, we have 5 questions, and I got a video to work on, and I don't know, maybe you can help me with it. I realized this morning that the video topic I was going to do doesn't work for what I'm going to do, so I have a new topic, and we'll talk about it later on.
Okay.
People will get both videos
I don't know what that
eventually,
means, but
though.
okay.
They will get both videos. We have 5 questions. Every, 6 weeks or so, month and a half-ish.
Something to that effect.
We do a 5 questions episode, which means that we take 5 questions that have been submitted to us via our Reddit over at collegeinfogeek.com/community, or YouTube comments, or Twitter, or really anything. Email is another one. People somehow find our email, and we just rapid fire answer 5 of the questions that we don't think really could fit a whole episode. Though more often than not, we end up talking about one question for what could be an episode. That's my fault, though.
What are you going to do?
I was born a rambling man, as the Allman Brothers once said. So we've got 5 questions, but before we get into it, just want to let you guys know that if you have any questions for us, whether you want them to be on an episode like this, or if you want them to be their own episode, if there's something a bit more substantial, you can leave a YouTube comment, or email us, or tweet us, or use smoke signals, or neutrino communication. If you can figure that out, that's pretty sweet. You may be able to communicate at faster than light speed. If you could do that, would be pretty sweet. But we are going to get into these 5 questions, starting with the first one. How long do you guys play games on a weekly basis while still being productive? And this person had a sub-question. Also, how do you resist the urge to think about playing when you're supposed to be doing something else? I run into situations where I hit the end of a play session and have something unresolved that keeps me thinking about the game.
To be completely fair, they were 2 different people in the same thread.
Okay.
But the questions are important. They're important questions. We were just talking about Mario.
We were just talking about Mario. See, we're playing 4D space chess because we think about the first question and segue into it with our seemingly irrelevant intro.
Yep, something like that. So basically, we're looking for some sort of baseline here that says, I'm not probably messing things up if I play this much. That's still possible.
Yeah.
I personally maybe play games an hour and a half a night, probably a little more on the weekends, unless I have something I have to make up. But,
You play games every night?
Usually.
You do? Okay. I don't know. A lot of times I have no idea what you're doing.
Unless I'm reading or something.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard for me to say how often I play games because I'm a very phasic person, as you well know. So I'll get into a game for a while. Like when I was playing Final Fantasy 15, I spent like 3 hours.
You spent 3 hours playing the first 10% of that game.
Yeah, I think I have like 15 hours into it, which is weird because I feel like I just started. I probably did just start.
I put like 100 hours into that game.
And I've put, I don't know,
that might not be true.
8 or 10 hours into Stardew Valley at this point. So when I get a new game, I'll go pretty hardcore on it, but then I'll get into something else. Like last night, I just played guitar and read that cryptography book, and I played no video games. Yeah. Because there was no Mario Odyssey.
In that case, we can expand this. Like, how many hours do you think you spend not doing anything productive? And it's important to note that we're not students anymore.
Yeah.
So we're not doing homework.
But we played a lot of games.
But I played like 300, 400 hours of Monster Hunter in college. So
yeah. Yeah, we played a lot of games. The thing is just like put your games after the homework.
Yeah.
Or I mean, if you want to, you could use it as like a break between homework sessions.
Very specific games work for that with me.
Yeah, I wouldn't do Final Fantasy break because you're just going to be thinking about the story.
That's that second question where like you're going to get stuck into it. You have to stop, but you're in the middle of a chapter. Like I'll play like Puyo Puyo Tetris as a break if I want, because I could just turn that off. It's just a little game. And then there are like the story games or the exploration games where you get stuck in them, and those I would probably not play until I'm done with anything, because I either won't be able to get into it enough because I know I have work coming up, or I'll get into it and then I will just be thinking about it during all of my next work. That totally happens. Mm-hmm. So there are certain kind of games that work better.
I think a lot of people feel like this is like unfair, like, oh, I can't play the game I want to play as a break. Just think of it this way. Like, would you go and start a movie and watch 20 minutes of the movie as a break between 2 homework sessions? Or would you go read like half of a Harry Potter chapter?
Yeah.
No.
Like it kind of bothers me most of the time to not finish a chapter. And if I get stuck in the middle and have to stop, I'll reread the whole chapter again.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not that helpful either. It would have been better for me to just wait.
Yeah, exactly. You know? Whereas when I was in college, sometimes I would take a break from homework and then go play like 4 songs on Guitar Hero. Or like now, maybe I'll take a break and play like 2 games of Overwatch. That isn't going to linger on in my head all day.
It ends.
Like, I played the songs, that was fun, okay. And maybe I still want to play, but it's not like I have these open loops in my head. It's just like the thing is done, the break has been had, and I can go back to doing what I want to do. But the main thing is, like, you have to have an end time to your work day. If you keep working all the time, your efficiency is going to go down. So if you want the break time afterwards to be used for games, then make it used for games. Just make sure that the games or the time you sink into a games is a function of how long you need to do your work efficiently.
Yeah. Yeah. If you worry about the important stuff first, then like who cares how much you're playing?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And
I played 400,000 hours of Monster Hunter and it was not a problem.
Yeah. And that seems obvious. One thing that I do want to mention here is that there are so many video games. And if you view yourself as a gamer, you may feel like you're obligated to play them all or that you're going to be missing out. You'll get that feeling of FOMO if you don't play all these games that are coming out. It's only going to get worse.
Yeah.
Every game company is releasing longer and longer games. Everyone's releasing their giant open world time sink 500-hour adventure.
Oh, don't give me another open world game. Stop it.
I was watching the review for Mario Odyssey and they're like, yeah, after you beat the main campaign, there's like 500 hours of extra stars to find or something like that. And then on the same day, the new Assassin's Creed came out. And I'm like, you know what? I want to play both of those, but I probably won't. Just because I have other priorities. You know, it would be cool to play both of those, but the new Assassin's Creed is also this like much more padded out, long RPG style game where there's grinding and you got to go get animal pelts. And it's like, it's not a 10-hour thing like Assassin's Creed 1 was. So am I going to play it?
Yeah, the good old days.
Maybe.
No, but that's a good thing to bring up, though, you know, because I used to, I did this similarly recently with my Goodreads account. Mm-hmm. And I almost had something similar to Goodreads set up with video games a long time ago. But I was like, setting up this list makes me feel horrible because there are so many games I haven't played. And the thing is...
the backlog thing?
Yeah, the backlog. Having a backlog, turning your games into a to-do is bad. I've got some games upstairs I haven't even played. Mm-hmm. Haven't even played yet. They're just in there. I'll play them eventually. And if I don't, oh well, I guess I bought them. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
But the same thing with books. So for people who do have a backlog of games and that's just stressing you out, I had a backlog of books because every time I walked into a bookstore, I'd add like 10 books to my Goodreads. Mm-hmm. And then I had 400 to read. And I was getting to the point where at the rate I kept adding them, I would literally die before I could even finish the books I put on a list myself. Let alone
if you read all the books that teach you how to become immortal.
Oh, okay, fair. So
read those ones first.
Let alone any books that came out after that. Any books that I was really into at the moment but hadn't heard of. Like, so I deleted the whole to-read list, all of it. It's just gone. I don't care. I'm reading whatever I feel like, and I am actually reading quite a bit more. So if you're all stressed out because you can't play enough games, maybe that's also something to look at. What is enough? Yeah. Enough is enough to amuse yourself. There's too much media in the world to consume.
And I think that is healthy. I don't know. One thing I realized is like you, I had been adding books to Goodreads for years. And I've been doing the same with like a list of movies I should watch and TV shows I should watch. And then I thought about it critically and I was like, you know what? When I actually end up playing a game or reading a book, it is never because I went onto my Goodreads list and said, which one should I read now? It's never because I went onto my TV shows list. Like I had Game of Thrones in the back of my head for so long. Like I should watch that someday. It's really good. I never decided to sit down and watch it. The reason I watched it is because Anna started watching it and then she was like, Tom, you have to watch this with me. So I basically got like roped into watching it with her. And with this cryptography book even, I was in Portland for a wedding. We went to Powell's City of Books, which is the best bookstore in the world. And I'm just looking around. I'm like, I kind of feel like reading something about computer science or cryptography. It just seems interesting right now. So I walk up to the section, browse the shelves for a bit, and I find a couple of books that look interesting. One's called The Code Book. And I'm like, that looks really cool. It's like a history of cryptography. I buy it, start reading it, super fascinating. And then I happened to look at my Goodreads the other day. I added it to my Goodreads 4 years ago.
Yeah. So like the to read list, maybe it is on your list, but that's not even, it's not like you went through with the checklist mindset. All right, I'm going to read the first book on this list and I'm just going to go down, because then what's going to happen is maybe you'll enjoy the books, but you'll probably hate the whole process surrounding it.
Yeah.
And the act of reading.
Yeah, exactly. So I had no recollection that I had that on my list. Now, this isn't to say that a Goodreads list or a game backlog or a movie list is inherently a bad thing, because it can be useful to make a note of the things you might want to read in the future. I think what you're getting at is the problem starts when you start to view it as a task list rather than just a note.
When you start to become like unhealthily obsessed with filling out the list or completing it, when you start to feel guilty, we were talking about in another one about no hobby obligations. Yeah. When you start to feel guilty that you're not getting enough game time to suit your perfect needs to complete all the games coming out this semester, that's probably unnecessary. Also, that's what, weekends in the summer for. You wait till a break and then you just play 90 hours a day. You just do it. But once it starts to feel unhealthy, and you'll know because you feel bad all the time about it, that's when I feel great since deleting all those books. Like, I backed them up. They're not lost forever if I want them, but I don't want them. So they're going to stay hidden in an Evernote archive somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for me, books and games, I mean, with books, I want to learn things, but with games especially, it's like, it's all about the in-the-moment fun, not the completionist
Yeah, what if you're not in the mood for like an RPG right now? You shouldn't play Final Fantasy. It's really long and an RPG. If you're not in the mood, you shouldn't do it.
Well, it's the same thing with like piano for you. I'm guessing you don't sit down and then feel guilty that you haven't mastered that Wind Waker song or the Twilight Princess song you've been working on.
No.
You just play it for fun.
Yeah.
And you get a little better every time, but someday you'll be able to play the whole thing and you'll be like, oh, that's nice.
I'm really bad at finishing songs that I didn't write.
Oh, I mean, either way.
I learn half of it and then I'm like, well, that was enough of a challenge. But I mean, there's another example. If I felt guilty for not finishing it, then I would feel bad. So now I'm just like, that's what I do. I don't care if I finish it.
Well, whenever you're playing it, I've never heard you finish the song, but the parts of it that you do play sound awesome, and I'm guessing that it's a lot of fun to play them.
Yeah.
And I almost never write a full composition on the guitar. I'll just create a lick that maybe lasts like a minute or something, and it's great. I love playing that kind of stuff. And maybe I never finish it, but
fun
that's
is enough of a purpose. You don't need to add some sort of task.
Yeah. So bottom line with that one, your break time, number one, you should prioritize it because you're not going to be efficient without it, but it should be something that comes after the work is done. So that way you don't have to worry about it. And then if you can't stop thinking about a game, number one, play games that don't open loops in your head.
Yeah, maybe you got to play like the crazy ones on Saturdays or something, and then for the week you're just playing some small stuff.
Mm-hmm. And keep in mind, there's gonna be times when there's an open loop in your head. Like if you tried to live your life in avoidance of open loops, then you would never really dedicate yourself to anything
think you'd
cool.
Succeed at that, no matter how hard you tried.
Just deal with that, I suppose. I don't know. I have an open loop in my head right now with the design I'm working on, and I have to go work on a video today.
Your life would have to be so simple to avoid ever having something else in the back of your head.
You're just going to have to deal with it. Like, I have to get a video out at the end of this week, and if I could choose it, I would rather be working on this project I have, but I can't. Yeah. There's obligations that I need to fulfill, so I will do them. Question number 2, and this one's, I think, for you more than me. Should I do one language at a time or try learning several simultaneously?
Well, I would suggest one at a time for the most part. You totally can learn more than one, but the problem with that lies in the fact that if you're learning super beginning grammar in 2 languages, especially if they're similar, you might get them confused. And also, you make better progress on something when you put a lot of time and effort into one focus. Yeah. And then you got that depth. Because if I start learning Italian and Portuguese tomorrow, and I'm going to give like 10 minutes a day to both because that's all the language time I have, then I would be much better off putting 20 minutes into one of them instead. Because 1, I might confuse them, and 2, my progress will be so slow in both that I feel bad about both, basically for a long time.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, you can get things mixed up, right? especially if like you're studying.
I mix
say,
things up that
Portuguese
don't even
and Spanish at the same time.
I mix up when I'm trying to speak French. My French is a little rusty because I just don't. I don't need to maintain it as high of level. I don't use it as often as Spanish, and that's okay. But sometimes I'll just end up using like Spanish words with a French accent, and I speak a very good level of Spanish and 2-3 years worth of French that I was pretty good at back in that time. So if you wanted to learn more than one, it would be better to stagger them a little bit. Mm-hmm. Like you focus really hard on one language for, I don't know, a month or two or something. And then once you've got like a basic grasp, it would be easier to move on.
Yeah.
If you wanted to learn more than one at once. But as with most things, at least for me, I prefer doing one thing at once because I feel so much better about the progress I'm making. Mm-hmm. Because I would rather be really proud that I'm getting pretty good at Spanish than kind of not wanting to talk about the fact that I'm pretty mediocre at Italian and Portuguese right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I want to get to the point where I'm proud of it and happy to talk about it and not trying to. I don't want to feel guilty. And if I feel behind on multiple languages because I'm learning them at the same time, I will feel bad about them. And that makes them less fun.
Now, I guess the one caveat I'd put here is that with language, the more similar the language is, the more potential there is for crossover, mixing things up and getting things confused, right?
Yeah, but there are going to also be times where I can remember the Japanese word for something at the moment, but like not something else. And I won't mistake it. I won't replace it and use it. I'll just be like, oh no, I know that word in like 2 languages right now, and that neither of those are the languages that I wanted.
Right.
Sometimes I don't know a word in English for a little bit.
Yeah.
So even if they're not related, it might be hard to remember the right ones if you don't practice them enough, because you really got to keep the language in your head to keep it about. If I stop speaking Spanish, it'll take much longer than French, I guess. Mm-hmm. But if I stop speaking Spanish for the next 10 years, I will likely not have that good of a grip on Spanish in 10 years. And if I stop speaking French for like probably a year because I speak it at such a lower level, then I will probably need to start over all that stuff. So if you don't put enough time into them, you're going to start losing basic words for each of these multiple languages. And so you could do it if you had enough time. If you could give enough time to maintain and improve both of them, then sure, but I think most people lack free time.
So I guess that's the line of questioning that I want to explore right now. How disparate do 2 different disciplines need to be for you to be able to split your time between them? And I ask that because I feel like, the question of splitting time between languages at a more fundamental level, you could phrase it as, should I split time between 2 different pursuits, like skills I'm trying to learn in general? Yeah. So right now I'm taking a parkour class. I'm also playing guitar quite often, and I'm learning some computer algorithm stuff at the moment. And like those things are all very separate. So I feel like there's literally no potential for me to screw up or confuse
You're not
anything.
You're not going to start trying to algorithmically do stuff on your guitar.
Yeah, and I'm not going to like try to do a Kong vault over a JavaScript algorithm or something like that. Doesn't make any sense.
I like that phrase though. It sounds really good right now, particularly.
I could definitely see hipster highwayman just Kong vaulting over some algorithms there. Yeah. But the question is like, I don't know, because one is very exercise based, so that's very good on one level because it's getting me active and everything. I feel like if I didn't do that and I took all the time that I would have been spending practicing parkour and poured it into algorithm stuff, like there's a limit I'm gonna hit with the gains I could make in that. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's just like you need to have a certain amount of free time. If you have so little free time that you're only dedicating like 10 minutes to each thing, then there's a clear-cut answer and you need to focus. Yeah. If you have a good amount of free time, then, given the fact that you can split that among a couple of different things and still be able to really deeply engage with each thing when you're working on it, then maybe it is okay to do 2 at once.
If you're hitting a limit that you're like happy with, your parkour stuff, if you're hitting a limit and you're like, okay, well, one, this is exercise based, so there is a hard limit on what your body can do. Yep. But arguably, if you dropped the other 2 and spent all this time studying techniques and reading up on parkour and practicing and focusing on all the best food for it and sleep and whatnot, you would get better at it than right now balancing it with other things. But if you're right now doing enough to be happy with it, then that's fine.
Yeah, I guess that's true. So it's like the balance between
you could read that whole crypto book if you stopped going to parkour class much faster, and you could do it. at any given time, you will get the most done by doing one thing, but you don't have to do the most. That's not what life is about.
Yeah.
So it's like with multiple languages, if you can't give enough time to be happy with what you're doing in both, then do one.
Okay. So there's a depth threshold, I would say. There's some amount of time where if you study for less than that amount of time, you can't slip into the flow state. You can't get deep.
Yeah.
But once you've hit the depth threshold, if you can spend a decent amount of time there, at that point, whether or not you're doing multiple pursuits, multiple languages, hinges on how bad do you want to be world class, or how bad do you want to get to expert level status in this versus, how much do you want to, for enjoyment's sake, put time into something else.
Yeah.
And then with languages, I'm also concerned about the mix-up thing.
Yeah, well, the mix-up makes it particularly complicated, especially with similar languages. So if you are doing multiple, I still definitely recommend staggering them, getting through the basics in one language. You got your head around most of the basic grammar you need, and then moving on while continuing one.
Yeah,
that will make that easier. But
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's just about doing whatever you're satisfied with.
I gotta say though, and this is a little off topic, being into the things I'm in right now has made me a lot happier. Like a few months ago,
isn't that kind of the goal?
I think 2 months ago, I would have said like, I'm still living in Denver, like still running a pretty successful business, but I wasn't exactly like super happy or fulfilled. I had a lot of days where I was just like, what exactly am I doing right now? And it gets to the point where like you like your job, but maybe the aspects of your job that you have to keep up aren't fulfilling you intellectually, but you still have to do them.
Yeah.
So I think getting into something that you're really interested in, and maybe if it is a couple things, as long as those are making you happy, then you don't need to necessarily be like on the fast track to world-class performance.
Oh, no. It's like, do you want to speak Korean in the next year to like 80% degree?
Yeah.
Or are you willing to wait longer because you also want to be doing some other stuff? Like you just kind of pick what do you want out of it. But there is a threshold where you're doing so many things that you can't even.
Yeah, if I were to add like wasting 5 more things, there would be no depth.
Like you're not going to get any joy. You're not going to reach a state where you're actually learning in any of them.
Yeah.
So there is like a minimum.
Yeah.
But
right now, being able to put
like
4 to 5 hours into parkour every week, being able to play guitar for like half an hour a night, and then spending a good amount of time reading up on this computer science stuff, it's a lot of fun. I think it's a good balance. I don't feel like I'm too stressed out, and I'm making enough progress for it to feel meaningful. So just seek that balance there. All right, question number 3. I think best out loud. So what should I do when I don't have someone to talk to? And I have an answer for this question.
Oh, good.
Yep. You can talk to the little rectangle in your pocket.
That is true.
I do this all the time because I think out my videos out loud a lot of times. Sometimes I can sit down and write a script, but the typical workflow for me making a video is when I don't feel any pressure on the deadline, I'll like go do some research. I'll get some things noted down into Evernote. I'll start to build a research document, but it doesn't really become cohesive until I get near to the deadline. And then once I get near the deadline, I start coming up with things at the most inopportune times. Like literally this morning, I woke up at 6:20 a.m., got in the shower, and immediately started thinking of things I wanted to put in the video. And I'm like, oh crap, what can I do? I don't have someone to talk to. I don't have something to record. So one thing I do have is a waterproof shower notebook.
Yeah.
So I will write down little notes to myself. I'll talk it out in the shower, and then I'll write down the most important points onto that shower notebook. And then I'll get out of the shower, I'll go into my room, and I'll just hold my camera in front of my face on my phone and talk out a really rough draft of the video. Or if I'm in the car, I'll use the voice recording app. And there's one I do want to recommend. So there is the default voice notes app on basically any phone. But the one I like, at least on the iPhone, is called Rec Up, like record up, so Rec Up.
Oh, I got you.
It used to be called Dropbox because what it does is records your voice and then immediately uploads that file to Dropbox.
Oh.
So the voice app is pretty cool, like the default one, but you have to manually hit the share button to get it into Dropbox. And for me, I want to be able to review those files later on my computer because that's where I'm doing the work and actually writing the script. So Dropbox will just immediately port it over to Dropbox. I can open it immediately. So that reduces the friction. But basically, for me, it's just record your thoughts.
Yeah.
Because you're talking to your future self, essentially.
I've done the exact same thing. I've definitely recorded into my phone plenty of times. I also just talk to myself, you know, frequently enough. Maybe I look a little weird, but I'll talk to myself if I'm like working through an idea at home, or I'm going for a walk. Hopefully there aren't too many people around. But if you want to go for a walk and talk to yourself, just put some headphones in. People will think you're on the phone. Done.
That's true.
Now you don't look so weird.
Yeah.
But the shower is a great place. I would say that also if the problem, like that works for when there just isn't somebody, but if the problem isn't normally somebody, you can also try to get something like a mastermind group.
Yeah.
Or like my ever supporting girlfriend has basically learned that there are certain times where I'm asking her questions and I'm talking to her about something, and sometimes I want an answer, but sometimes she can just kind of sit there and then I'll keep talking and then I'll figure it out and I'll be like, oh yeah, nice. And I just had the conversation with myself under the guise of having it with her, and she totally knows this. But you can set up systems to where you have somebody to work with. But if you do, even if it's just a singular person, then you should probably help them with similar things so that it's not like a one-sided, you're literally my voice recorder.
Mm-hmm. I have several Skype friends who they all work at home just like I do. So a lot of times if I want to talk to somebody, I can just message them and say, hey, you got time to Skype to Matt or Andrew or someone like that? Yeah. And we'll get on Skype and I'll bounce ideas off of them. And then invariably we end up talking for probably 2 hours. So it usually wastes a lot of the day. I'll put wastes in quotes because I am kind of thinking through things. And that's useful. Now, one thing, and I'm probably sure you're aware of this, is a technique that programmers use called rubber duck debugging, where they will keep a rubber duck on their desk, or really anything. Could be a Wario amiibo or any inanimate object.
Or a good amiibo.
Or a good amiibo, I guess, like a Wario amiibo, you know. And they'll just talk the problem out to the inanimate object of their choosing. Because the act of talking... You've never heard of this?
No.
Really?
No, I just talk to myself. I don't need to pretend it's something else.
I figured you had at least heard of the concept.
I hadn't heard of it. That's pretty cool, though.
Interesting. Yeah, they just talk the problem out to the rubber duck or to the Wario amiibo, and the act of talking it out, trying to put it into terms that another person would understand, helps you to reframe the problem. So maybe you don't need a person, maybe you just need an imaginary friend.
That might make you look weird. Hey there, Mr. Duck, look at this. What's this line of code doing? Oh, let me explain that to you, Mr. Duck. That's going to be... Maybe try to do it a little more low-key, or don't.
Hey, I'm alone half the time. I can talk to the rubber ducks all I want.
I want that now.
There you go. Yeah, I'm going to buy you a rubber duck. Everyone who works at College Info Geek gets a free rubber duck to talk to and look like a crazy person.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to feel so crazy.
You could do that on the walks, too. You just talk to your duck on a nice walk.
You just walk around the town, just, hey, Mr. Duck, how's it going? That would look real weird. And even without the duck, one thing that I find is if I get out a sheet of paper and start just drawing out my ideas, I can talk to myself because I'm essentially creating a feedback loop where I say a few things and then I'm writing it down. So I am creating a record and I'm creating an external representation of my ideas that isn't just bound up in my voice.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of ways you can do it.
Written stuff's easier to scan later, too.
It is.
That's kind of my annoyance with the voice recording is that I have to listen through it, and sometimes it's long if I was unsure of what I was going to say.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but when I'm working through a really difficult problem, like when I was on the plane trying to figure out how to create Sudoku puzzles, or when yesterday I was like trying to figure out how a certain sort works in computer science, I talk to myself the whole time. Like I don't sit there silently trying to visualize how things work. I actually talk them out.
Yeah.
And I might do them under my breath so no one can hear me, but I'm still talking.
At the very least, I'm saying them all very deliberately in my head, if not out loud.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I don't know. Bottom line, voice recording apps, Skype friends, and imaginary friends. It's fine.
Yep. Nothing like a duck.
Question number 4. Why not just put everything into Anki? Why not? Put your dog into Anki. Put your dinner into Anki.
I don't remember my dog's name. I want to put that into Anki.
There you go. Yeah.
I want to meet that dad.
Everyone's going into Anki.
I want his barbecue brisket.
here's the thing, and I do want to define, every time we mention Anki, I feel the need to define it and also say how it's spelled. So Anki, A-N-K-I. Wow, almost.
Wow, you can't even.
A-N-K-I.
Expert.
Is it's a flashcard app that uses spaced repetition. And if you don't know what spaced repetition is, I wrote an article, I made a video that we'll link to in the show notes. It's a very, very effective study technique. The thing about Anki is its style of quizzing you is flashcard style.
Yeah.
You create flashcards or download them, and then you are quizzed on them. So the most common case in Anki is just translating words in a different language. So if you're studying Japanese, maybe it shows you a kanji and you have to say, okay, that's the kanji for toenail or something like that. And then you see if you got it right. If you did, you tell the program if it was easy or if it was difficult, or if you got it wrong, you say you got it wrong. And then based on your answer, it will either show you the card again during the same study session if you got it wrong, or it will show you it way in the future if it was easy, or pretty soon if it was pretty difficult.
Yeah, basically, if you know the word, it's not going to keep asking you the word.
Yeah, exactly. So this is why not put everything into Anki. Number one, flashcard style quizzing just isn't the most effective way to study every subject out there. It might be great for language vocabulary, but if you're trying to learn grammar, like it might be useful, but it is probably
better
for you
to think about how to make the cards.
Yeah.
You'd have to think about that.
I think that when I was going through Text Fugu, there was actually grammar quizzes in Anki that I did. But more often than not, I was writing Japanese grammar, or I was trying to read sentences. And that's a different kind of exercise than just quizzing yourself on a flashcard. And to take it a step further, if you're learning like algorithms or something, or if you're learning math, then looking at a flashcard that has a sigma notation problem on it, and then just trying to guess it and then turning it over and seeing the answer isn't as useful as literally writing out a sigma notation problem and working it on a piece of paper, going through the steps of the formula and understanding every single step of the equation.
Yeah. Well, spaced repetition is like a super efficient form of memorization, but it's memorization. And that's not the same as understanding.
It isn't. Okay, yeah. I wouldn't say it's just memorization. It is learning, but yes,
for that same
difference.
equation, though, eventually what would happen is I would likely just remember what that problem looks like and remember the answer.
Yeah. I mean, I do want to point out here that spaced repetition isn't just for memorization.
Oh, well, I mean, this is like the flashcards and spaced repetition put together.
The spacing effect in general is just the fact that your brain learns information better when it is forced to recall it near the time when it would forget it.
Yeah.
So that can work for sports, it can work for math, and it can work for language and flashcard study. But I think what you're talking about is like using Anki style.
Yeah, I mean specifically like these are flashcards, and what might happen, you're going to memorize what the back of the flashcard says.
Yes.
So maybe there's a grammatical thing going on there, but you just know the answer to that question now. That doesn't mean you could recreate it yourself. Mm-hmm. It's a different kind of thing, but also it just doesn't equate to understanding. So for things where you need to really innately understand it, practice is going to be different. In addition to the fact that Anki isn't the most efficient way to learn every kind of thing, even if you're putting things like vocabulary words into it, if you put too many things into it, you are going to hate it, and you are probably going to burn out, because I was going through like adding every word I thought was kind of interesting from a Spanish book. And then it occurred to me, most of these words aren't that important, and I now have a list of like 3 billion words I need to put into Anki later. Even putting them into Anki is really like, I don't want to do that. It's really scary. It's going to take me years to make good cards for all this. Yeah. But then if you're spending 20 minutes a day reviewing words, that I guess you're probably going to learn the words, and that's important for basic words. But sometimes you're going too far, and maybe 20 minutes of a conversation would actually be better.
Yeah. And the thing that I want to bring up, which is very related to this point about it getting overwhelming, is the most effective ingredient in learning anything is interest. Bar none. You have to be interested. And the thing about Anki is when you start, it is interesting because it's an effective study tool. So you feel like you're making quick progress in the language that you are hopefully interested in.
Yeah.
But the act of studying Anki flashcards itself is not that interesting because there's not a whole lot of context there. Like You see the Japanese kanji for toenail, you flip it over, that's toenail. Cool. I know the word for toenail now. But it isn't really bundled up in anything else that you're really
No, that wasn't a nice conversation about
in.
toenails you had with a stranger. I don't know why you would have that, but...
Hey, man, I don't judge.
You know?
But you have a point there. Going out and having a nice toenail-based conversation with a stranger.
I'd like to practice the word toenail. You want to talk about it?
Yeah.
That's a pretty good opener.
How long are your toenails?
I mean, I'm going to have that conversation for at least a few sentences before I run away.
Exactly. And as every language learner knows who has used Anki, as you get further and further into study, Anki typically gets bigger and bigger, filled up with more and more cards, and if you let it, can come to represent more and more of your study time every day.
Yeah.
So just remember, Anki is not the most direct way to interact with your subject of study in a way that you are interested in. If I'm really interested in computer programming, it's going to be a lot more interesting for me to go out and write a program or go debug a program somebody else made so I can make it do something else than it is for me to see a flashcard that says, what type of sort is this? Flip. Oh, it's bubble sort. Cool. Like, that's a little interesting, but not as interesting as going and writing the actual thing.
Yeah.
So that's why I don't put everything in Anki.
Yeah, and
Anki is a tool for a specific use.
We can extend that a little bit, and there's another question in there a little bit. Why not systematize everything? Why not put everything in your productivity, your to-do systems, all this stuff? And to that, I say, because it's not fun.
Yeah, your brain isn't a computer yet.
I'm not a robot, and I have had my productivity system and things like Anki so intense that every day I had to do so many things that it told me to do that I more or less wrote a program for myself. And while that sounds efficient, life's not about being efficient. At least mine isn't. That's not the point. Like, at some point, I will hopefully look back and say, I enjoyed that. That was cool. Not, this was a really effective use of my time. Yes.
Hello, fellow human being. Would you like to ingest calories and turn them into ATP?
Yeah, exactly.
In order to power our muscles for locomotion and also brain processing.
Yeah, I have hobbies that I refuse to put into any sort of system or have goals with, like photography, because I don't care if I get good at it. And if I make it into something like that, or with piano, if I make learning that Zelda song like a chore somehow, it's just, I'm not going to like it as much as if I was, all I wanted was to mess around. I don't care if it's an effective use of my time.
I think somebody asked me on Twitter the other day, like, what are your most effective guitar practice tips or something like that? It was something about guitar practice. And I just tweeted back, when I play the guitar, I never practice. It is never, I'm going to sit down to practice the guitar. It is always, I am sitting down to play the guitar. And I get better every time I play, but if I decide to run through a scale, it's because it's fun. I'm not sitting there going, oh, I'm going to get better at scales. I'm going to sit here and practice scales. And you know what? That's totally valid for people who want to be musicians or for people who have set a goal to get better at the instrument for some external reason. But for me personally, oops, hit the mic. That's professional. For me personally, guitar is not something that I want to become some expert in. I don't want to master the guitar. I want to sit down and I want to play, and I just love playing. So if I come up with something in my head and it's hard for my fingers to do, I'll just keep doing it, but it's because I like to do it.
Yeah, it's okay to not be an expert, and it's okay to not have external goals you're reaching if you just want to mess around.
Yeah.
So don't put everything into Anki because you'll overwhelm yourself, but also don't put everything into any system because you'll overwhelm yourself.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so last question here. Number 5, I'm graduating soon.
Mambo number 5.
And I'm also thinking of, what is it, Jurassic 5? Is that that rap group?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, they're great. All right, I'm graduating soon, but I've realized I don't like my major career path. What should I do? This was me, actually.
Panic.
Yeah, panic, freak out.
All hands on deck.
Have horrible anxiety, realize that life is totally out of your hands and deterministic, and just go get a job. Spend 40 years at it, hate it, but bring your sack lunch, take a walk every day to kind of de-stress a little bit, retire when you're 65.
Hey, you can switch up condiments on your sandwich every day.
Yes, you
and
can.
And that will just, that's the spice of life. Spice is the spice of life.
Don't use Dijon mustard, though.
What?
You'll be out of touch.
No, it's great. It's good stuff.
I had this problem actually. Now it wasn't near when I was about to graduate, but I did my internship after my sophomore year. And for the first 2 years of college, I was pretty gung-ho about being in IT. I was really interested in it. I was learning how Linux worked. I was learning programming. I was studying for CompTIA A+ and Network Plus. Like, I was gung-ho. And I got this internship at the networking department in this big financial corporation. And they put me into a cubicle. And for 3 months, I did work that made me feel like I was in prison.
Nice.
And
I love it.
I remember looking around at the cubicles thinking like, this 3-month internship feels like a prison sentence to me. I don't know how everyone who's working here full time deals with it because they don't have an end date in sight. I mean, I guess, theoretically there's
We've
retirement.
all got an end date in sight, Thomas.
We will all expire someday. Yeah. Now, this isn't Dear Hank and John. This isn't a death podcast.
I'm trying to have an existential crisis over here.
Maybe I can get you on their show.
Panic attacks are fun in my experience.
Hey,
so let's have
Hank.
some.
My friend Martin wants to have an existential crisis. Is it cool if he comes on your show for a bit?
Yes.
Yes, he can come on. Yep, we'll set up a date. But I just didn't get it. I was like, how do these people deal with this? Now, maybe they liked the job more than I do. It's very possible. But I got done with that internship and I was like, I can't do that. But I didn't change my major because I was already pretty far into the major. Now, there is the sunk cost fallacy and all that. Like, oh, I've put this much effort in. That really wasn't a factor in my calculation. The factor in my calculation was I want to be in college for 4 years because I don't want to be in it for 5.
Yeah.
And switching my major is going to add extra time, extra cost onto my curriculum. And crucially, I don't think it's actually going to help me do what I want to do. So that one thing this person didn't tell us about was whether or not he had an idea of something he may want to pivot to, or if he's just like, I don't like what I'm in. That's kind of a crucial distinction here. I had something that I wanted to do because while I was working through that internship, I was also building College Info Geek, and that summer happened to be the time where it started to gain some initial traction. And I was like, maybe this could be something that maybe becomes a business, or at the very least helps me to get a job doing something I really like doing. Maybe I can go be like a marketing manager for a startup or work with a media company or something like that. Like, this is going to make my resume look really good, even though I'm not majoring in journalism or English or digital publishing or whatever you think would be aligned with that kind of a job. So I just went ham on College Info Geek while continuing to finish my major. And I decreased my involvement in extracurriculars so I could gain time to work on the blog.
Yeah.
So really what I was doing was I was working on a gradual pivot to something else. And this is really what you need to think about. How can I pivot from the path I'm on to a new path? And the way you do this is that you have to build what's called career capital. You basically need to start building connections, experience, and skills in the new area that will allow you to gradually move over to it. You can't just say, I'm in finance, but I really think my passion is like hot yoga, so I'm just going to go start a hot yoga studio. You don't have connections. You don't have a yoga teaching certification. You don't have somebody who you can pay to be your yoga teacher. You don't know how to go rent out a place. Like, there's a lot of things you don't know how to do. You haven't done the market research. There's all these things that do not qualify you to own a hot yoga studio. Now, maybe you take a night class while you're working your finance job to get a yoga teaching certification. That might take you a while, but boom, now you've leveled up into your eventual pivot. Now you know how to teach yoga. Okay, now maybe you go work at a yoga studio on the weekends. So now you're starting to get a little bit of information about how a business is run, how you attract clients, how you work really well one-on-one with people so they don't think you're just like a crappy yoga teacher, because it's not just the ability to do yoga, there's also the teaching elements. And over time, you realize, okay, now, wow, I have a connection with an established yoga place. I might go open a shop in a different town, so I'm not competing with them, and I can actually maybe, trade business, help advertise each other. Now I have the skills and the certification, so I can actually convince people I'm qualified to teach. Okay, now I can take the leap. I'm gonna quit my job. I have a year-long runway. I'm gonna go rent a studio, and now I have a bigger chance of success. But it was this gradual process of building up everything that was needed to make the leap. You don't just do it right away. So if you're near graduation, number one, you got to ask yourself, do I have something I want to pivot to? And once you do, start creating a plan of attack for how do you move from what I'm doing now to that thing. You can probably create a list of things you would need to do, and then you can figure out how close am I based on that. Like our friend Clyde was in computer engineering, and he wanted to switch to our major, and then he realized, oh, I actually have more credits done in that major than I do in my own major.
Yeah,
okay,
that was
easy
weird.
Pivot. You're basically in that major, you just didn't even know it.
The pivot costs you nothing.
So the pivot is to go say, hey, I want to change my major. But if you want to change from computer engineering to, fashion design or something, that's a bit bigger of a pivot. So there's more considerations to be made, and there might be a longer runway of time where you're still keeping things up here because this is where your living is made while you're making preparations.
You got to eat, otherwise you can't pivot at all.
Yeah, exactly. And if this guy's really close to graduation, then he probably has to eat.
That's your most likely way to make money, probably.
Yeah, he might have student loans coming up, So put in a couple of years in that field that you don't like, but use that as an incubation period to make your leap.
Yeah, and I mean, I've done this with things because I didn't end up getting the job, but I was trying to get an IT job in like the language department at school. Right now, I have a goal. I've volunteered to teach English to some refugees, and I have a goal to get some certifications for teaching English and things like that. Mm-hmm. I am still currently becoming more qualified in language things just because I like it as a side thing. Nothing is stopping me from it.
Yeah.
Like my major has nothing to do with that. All that it is, and in fact, a lot of times just having a degree is going to be like the minimum for something, even if it's not that related, as long as you also have the experience to prove you can do it. So it's not like you're ruined forever until you can go back to school unless you have a very particular pivot in mind, which is harder and requires more school. That is sometimes the case.
Yeah.
But you can go do whatever you want in your free time. Just accept that you're going to be using your free time to slowly pivot to something productive that you like rather than to play more video games every night.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
That's the sacrifice.
And you might want to go spend more time working on language stuff in the future. It's not going to work out very well if you're just like, hey, Tom, peacing out to go teach English full time. Like, I don't know, maybe you could go sign up for the JPL and go teach English in Japan and be paid a stipend to eat rice and beans on.
Oh, see, in my case, I kind of just want it as like a side thing.
Yeah, that's totally fine.
But in general, like just say, bye, I'm going to do this dramatic thing. I'm going to tell my boss off. I'm going to leave and I'm going to do everything I ever wanted. Hopefully you've got a lot of money to back up that claim because you still need to live while you're pivoting. And if that new skill takes months or a year, you probably should have just done it on the side. Unless, you're rich or something, in which case I guess do whatever you want. You probably already could.
Yeah. You're probably not listening to this podcast.
Yeah, you don't need that.
You're just bouncing on a trampoline.
But realistically,
full of money.
you can make it slowly so that it can be affordable, realistic, and not really dramatic and have all your family go, "Did you just graduated and you just threw your degree in the trash. What are you doing?"
Yep.
Because I could see why they would respond that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, be smart about it. I mean, family is always going to complain about certain things, and that's not always a reason to not do things, but...
Oh, no, but in this case, just like abandoning something immediately without like a plan that makes use of things and makes sense, I don't know. Mm-hmm. But slowly pivoting, you can build a savings and, you can start to build a life.
And realize that even if you spend 2 years doing something after college, that doesn't set your career in stone. So many people pivot away from, in fact, actually, I would say more people pivot away from their initial career path a couple of years after college than those that decide they don't like it near graduation or while they're still students. I'm pretty much an anomaly among the people I know. I mean, I go to conferences all the time. I meet a lot of entrepreneurs who run their own businesses, and I know very few who got into this before they were done with formal education. Almost every single one will tell you some variation of the story of, well, I graduated with a degree in finance and then I went and worked in industry for like 4 years and then I realized it wasn't my passion. So now I'm running my hot yoga blog. Like, it's almost always a pivot after a few years in the industry that they initially intended to be in.
Yeah.
So
your
don't
degree
feel
is
like
not the end of you.
Yeah, don't feel like you have somehow missed the boat on this. If you're thinking about this near graduation, you're actually kind of ahead of the curve. Most people realize they don't like their industry after they've worked in it for a few years. So don't freak out. The other thing I want to mention here is what is it? There's 3 elements of work that make it fulfilling. I believe it's autonomy, competency, and meaningfulness. So if you do work where you feel like you have autonomy, you feel like you have the ability to make decisions independently, like you don't have a boss micromanaging you and telling you what to click on. If you feel competent, you feel like you're good at it, and you feel like it has meaning, like there's actually something you're contributing to that's bigger than yourself, then you're likely to feel fulfilled with your work, even if it's not necessarily in an industry that you're super passionate about. And there's a school of thought out there that I think is totally legitimate that says, have your day job, even if it's not your passion, as long as it meets those 3 criteria, have it. It will be fulfilling to some degree, and it can support the thing you really love as a side hobby that you don't feel needs to be your living.
Yeah, or maybe it can't be a living because your passion maybe isn't that marketable, but you have a family.
Yeah, or maybe you just don't want it to be living. I love playing music, but you know what? I never want to be a professional musician.
Yeah.
I never want to have to put out albums or go tour or sell merch to a bunch of people in a dingy club. I never want to do that. And I really like the impact that our work has. I think our work has a lot of meaning to it, and I wouldn't want to give that up. But I love playing music, so I will just use the money I make through this job to enable me to play some music. And maybe someday I'll even go play a gig somewhere, but it will be for fun, not because I think it needs to pay the bills.
Yeah.
Yeah. What you really like doesn't necessarily have to pay the bills. It can, but it doesn't have to. A couple of book recommendations for this particular question. There is the book So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport. That is on my essential reads list for students. I think every student should read that. And also, my friend Jenny Blake wrote an entire book called Pivot, all about how to make these moves. If you don't like your career, how do you get into something else? So if this is a question that you're thinking about, Pivot might be a book that you want to look into. In full disclosure, I'm in that book. So, yep. She interviewed me because of the whole pivoting from the internship to what I'm doing now thing. And also, I think from the pivot, pivoting from a blogger to a YouTuber idea as well. But it's a very good book. I think I'm in it for like a paragraph, so it's not some biopic about me.
I'd like to recommend the Thomas Frank biography.
Yeah, you might.
It's got some pretty sweet moments.
I think everyone should read my biography, otherwise their life will be incomplete and they won't know what to do with their lives. Yeah, I'm not self-important at all or anything. No, it's like a few sentences and then on to something else. And it's a good book. So those are our 5 questions. We will have those book recommendations and anything else we mentioned, such as the app for recording your voice, in the show notes for this episode, which you can find at cigpodcast.com/184, right? Yes.
Yep.
Or if you're watching this on YouTube, the link will be down in the description below. So just go click your mouse on that. You'll find all the goods. You can also subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Google Play or on YouTube if you like the video version to get new episodes every single week when they come out. And one great way to help support this podcast, if you decide to subscribe over on Apple Podcasts or maybe even Google Play. I'm not sure if you can do it on Google Play, but definitely on Apple Podcasts, you can review this show, give it a rating. That definitely helps to bump the show up the rankings and get it out to more people, help it grow, and that makes us very happy podcasters. So thank you guys if you do that, and thank you as always for watching/listening, and we will see you in next week's episode. Stay cute.